Hello, loved ones. Today is the most bittersweet of days in the entire church calendar. Today is Good Friday. And I always hesitate to just say today is Good Friday, because today is a horrific day as well. Today is the day that our Savior suffered. Today is the day that our Messiah was brutally killed and suffocated to death after hours of hanging on a cross. So, saying good is also hard. Because Jesus, the Son of God, came to earth. And when God was here on earth, we killed him. And there is no tiptoeing around that on this day of days. On this Friday in Holy Week, we have to sit in the reality that this world was so broken, with so much evil in it, that when God himself came to earth, filled with love and righteousness and justice and mercy, we killed him. And so I want us to sit in that, because I think it's important to sit in that, the weight of what Christ did, to not skip from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. Because if we're always looking away and diverting our eyes, not truly realizing and recognizing the death, the mistrial, the injustice of the crucifixion of our Savior, then what do we do when we see the suffering in this world? When we see the brokenness, when our children ask us, how can this world be so good and so bad all at the same time? A proper theology of suffering is so vital. And so I want us to read together portions of Matthew chapter 27. When Jesus was delivered to Pilate, when the crowd chooses Barabbas over Jesus to be freed, and when Jesus is mocked and crucified. This is portions of Matthew chapter 27. Then morning came, and all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate the governor. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You have said so." But when he was accused by the chief priest and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" But he gave no answer, not even a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now at the feast the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd one prisoner whom they wanted, and a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Christ?" For he knew it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, saying, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man Jesus, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." So Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called the Christ?" And they said, "Let him be crucified." "Why, what evil has he done?" Pilate asked. And they shouted again from the crowds, "Let him be crucified." Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and put a reed in his right hand. And kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spit on him, and took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. Now in the 6th hour there was darkness all over the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out loud with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" in Aramaic. And some of the bystanders hearing it said, "This man is calling Elijah." And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put in a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the other said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come and save him." And Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs were all opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised, and coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him kept watch over Jesus, they saw the earthquake and what took place, and they were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this is the Son of God." There were also many women there looking from a distance who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering with him, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Here ends the reading. I would encourage you to read all of Matthew chapter 27. So here is what we learn from Jesus on this Good Friday. Notice that Jesus never defended himself. Jesus offered no explanation, never got defensive. Jesus knew the injustice that was happening to him, the mock trial that he was going in, and yet he was obedient out of love for all of us. He was meek, and his meekness was not weakness. His meekness was strength. And the other thing that this shows us is that the world is not fair. If the world was fair, then when God himself came in the flesh, we would have accepted him. We would not have grown envious of him, plotted to kill him, misunderstood him. But you see, with the brokenness of this world, we just couldn't see what was right in front of our eyes. And so I want to encourage all of you this day of days in Holy Week, that the beauty and the goodness of Good Friday is that the God of the universe did not have to come as a paschal lamb, an innocent man, to die on the cross for us. But he did, out of love. He didn't have to face the mock trial, face the beatings. He didn't have to suffocate for hours upon hours on the cross, but he did. And not only was the prophecy fulfilled and the curtain of the temple torn in two, but we have a Savior that knows what it's like to suffer, to experience all the pain and the brokenness of this world firsthand. We do not have a God that is so distant from pain and death. We have a God who is so accustomed to it. And so I would challenge us today to not look away, to not fast forward to Easter Sunday, to remember that because of the brokenness and the evil in this world, Jesus had to come. And that the darkness seems like it's going to be forever, but there is always light that comes after the darkness. This has been a really tough time, And I know so many of you out there are dealing with job losses and layoffs and furloughs. And weddings are being canceled, and you're scared to deliver your babies. And you're just worried about all your loved ones. And I am too. All those things. I'm worried about all those things. But that's why today is good. Because God of the universe meets us in that. Meets us in the brokenness and the suffering and the injustice in this world and says, you're right. What you are going through is not fair. How the world is treating you is not fair. And guess what? The world did not treat me fair either. So Easter is coming, and with death comes resurrection because of Jesus. But I want us to sit, and I want us to meditate on what Good Friday means to us today. And it is going to mean something different to every single person. Our Savior had so many times, so many opportunities to save himself, to get defensive, to ride in on a horse, and he was meek and humble and served and loved. All the way up to death. And that love was so great that death could not hold him. So know that I love you all so much. But the love that I have for you does not hold a candle to the love that Jesus has for you. And I would encourage you not to look away at the suffering that our Savior endured. Because the suffering that is going on in the world is something that Jesus is very familiar with. He's been there. He's been there. And when you say you don't know, you have no idea what I'm going through, I don't. You're right. I don't. And maybe your spouse doesn't, or your coworkers don't, but Jesus does. That's our God. That's our God that knows exactly what you're going through. Your pain and your hardship. And that is why this Friday is good.